Over 2,000 people are reported missing every day. Some go missing under strange circumstances, while others vanish without a trace. This show discusses cases of people who mysteriously disappear and have not been found to this day. This is Disappeared, the podcast series.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Disappeared, the podcast series. I am your host, Benjamin, and on this show, I talk about cases of missing people who mysteriously vanish and have not been seen since. This case that I will cover tonight is once again a case in Florida. I want to cover a couple more Florida cases before I start prospecting cases in other states. To give a bit of a spoiler, I want to cover the case of Emily Paul, who disappeared in 2013, as well as Diana Alvarez, who disappeared early last year, Wendy Hudicock, who disappeared in 1998, Ben McDaniel, who disappeared in 2011, and Diane Auget, who went missing in 1998. I will probably combine some of those cases into single episodes because I have several of these cases on my list. But these disappearances are just too strange to pass up. The case I'm about to get into really pulled on my heartstrings. I remember when this case first broke in 2009 and there was a lot of media coverage nationwide. This case involves a lot of drug use, drug trafficking, physical abuse, prison time for drugs, and a conspiracy which grows with each passing year. This is the case of 5-year-old Haleigh Cummings, who abruptly disappeared on the night of February 9th, 2009, while reportedly asleep in her bed. Haleigh Cummings remains an active Amber Alert case to this day. So first, I want to get into the timeline surrounding Haleigh's life and the events that transpire throughout this case. In December of 2005, Ronald was given full custody of his daughter Haleigh and his other son he had with Haleigh's mother, Crystal. This was mainly because Crystal didn't take Haleigh to the doctor and she was also an admitted cocaine user. She was also unemployed at the time, which would make her unable to financially provide for her children. Ronald's ex, Crystal Sheffield, described Ronald as being a volatile man who would instill violence against her and their children. On February 9th of 2009, Haleigh's father, Ronald, told his live-in girlfriend, Misty, that he was going to work for the night and Misty needed to watch the kids. Ronald worked overnight as a crane operator. According to Haleigh's grandmother, Misty was using drugs in the days leading up to Haleigh's disappearance. Here, take a listen.
Misty had been out on a drug binge for 3 days. Her and Ron had fought that day, and she told him she didn't want to babysit, and he told her, yes, you are going to babysit. And he left the kids there with her, and she was still strung out.
So you also think the conspiracy extends to Ron? You think it's 4 people involved in the conspiracy?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Misty and Ronald got into an argument because Misty did not want to babysit that night. Ronald insisted that Misty watch his 2 kids. Ronald locked the back door and left for work. According to Ronald, the back door deadbolt was difficult for an adult to open, let alone a small child. Misty told the sheriffs that she put Haleigh and her brother to bed at 8 o'clock p.m. Misty then went to bed at 10 o'clock p.m. Later that night, Misty woke up to use the restroom and saw the kitchen light on and the back door held open by a cinder block. Sometime after 3 a.m., Ronald returned home from work. Misty told him she just discovered that Haleigh was missing. During the night Haleigh disappeared, Haleigh's little 3-year-old brother apparently saw a figure dressed in black who took Haleigh from the bedroom both he and Misty were sleeping in, and took Haleigh away. Due to his age, sheriffs are doubting his story about the man dressed in black. Picture yourself as Haleigh and being a 5-year-old. Wouldn't you get hysterical if you came to when someone was picking you up and you saw a mystery figure dressed in black? Wouldn't you scream or freak out in some way? Especially if it is someone Haleigh never saw before. She would probably remain quiet if the person picking her up was familiar to her. I find it pretty unlikely that none of the 3 people sleeping in that bed would wake up if a strange figure walks into the room. picks up 5-year-old Haleigh, and carries her out of the trailer. Misty claims the doors to the trailer were locked, so surely someone would have made noise during their attempt to gain entry into the home. The other possibility is that Haleigh's abductor had a key to the home and would therefore be close to the family. Here's the 911 call from Haleigh's father, Ronald, and his girlfriend, Misty, at 3:27 a.m. It is 4 minutes and 18 seconds, so if you want to skip past the call, just fast forward by 4 minutes, and the show will continue. So, here it goes.
I just woke up and our back door was wide open and my shit on her daughter.
Okay, when did you last see her?
We were just like, it was about 10 o'clock. She was sleeping, I was cleaning.
Okay, how old is your daughter?
And she's 5.
Okay, what was she last seen wearing? Ma'am?
She was in her pajamas. We were sleeping.
Okay, alright. You said your back door was wide open?
Yes, it was a brick. Like a brick on the floor. Like when I went to sleep, the door was not like that.
Okay, the back door, listen to me, your back door was wide open. What are you talking about, a brick?
Yes.
What is the brick?
It's on the back door, on the stairs. Like, we have like a walkway.
Uh-huh. And there was a brick laying there?
Yes, it's still there. They are.
We got them coming. Tell them we got them coming.
They're coming.
Okay, what does she look like? How tall is she? Give me some description of her.
She has like long hair, curly, like curls.
Long, curled, what color?
She's white.
Okay, what
And
color
she's brown hair.
Brown hair?
Yeah. Oh my God, it's freaking old.
How much does she weigh?
Like 40, 50 pounds, 60 pounds.
40 to 60 pounds?
Yeah. Oh, I just woke up.
Okay, was your back door locked, do you know?
Yes, but that's what always stays locked.
Man, I need somebody to get here now.
Okay, let me speak to him so he
Here.
I just got home from work. My 5-year-old daughter is gone. I need
Okay.
somebody to be here now. I'm telling you.
Listen to me. We got 2 officers.
If I find whoever has my daughter before y'all do, I'm killing them. I don't care. I'll spend the rest of my life in prison. I'm telling you, you can put it on recording. I don't care.
Okay, it's okay, sir. We got them on the way. Okay, can you give me what kind of description of her pajamas that she was wearing?
I don't fucking know. I got work.
Okay, sir, we got them coming, okay?
Hello?
Okay, sir, let me talk to your wife. So let me get some information from her.
Man.
Okay.
I fucking know.
Can I talk to her?
Yeah, man.
Okay.
How the fuck do you let my daughter go, bitch?
Ma'am?
Yeah.
Okay, listen to me. I need you to answer some questions. Does the door look like it was pried open?
He looks like it.
Does it look like you had someone try to enter into your house?
Hold on.
And another thing, make sure you and your husband don't touch the door anymore. Don't mess with the door or anything.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't look like it is?
No.
Okay, now listen, tell your husband do not touch anything. Make sure it's, because we're going to try to get a canine out there.
Okay. She said don't touch anything because they're bringing K9 out here.
They better motherfucking bring something in. If I find that motherfucking killing him, I don't give a fuck about prison. Prison don't scare me.
Okay, we understand. We got him on the way, okay? What's her date of birth?
I'm gonna fucking kill somebody.
Okay, well, tell him we understand. We need to get her date of birth.
What's her date of birth?
Fucking date of birth is. We need to find her. Fuck her date of birth.
Okay, listen to me. I'm getting this information. I'm not the officer driving out there, okay?
Okay.
They're coming out there to handle that situation. I need to gather all information from you over the phone. It has nothing to do with me driving out there. The officers are taking care of that, okay? They're coming out there, okay?
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to stay on the phone with you, okay?
Okay.
Until they get there. All right, hang on. Tell him we got him coming. He needs to try to calm down a little bit, okay? The officers are going to come out there and do what they can. We can't have him screaming and yelling at the officers whenever they get there, okay?
Got better people to talk to than the fucking motherfucker that ain't coming.
Ronald is obviously very upset over this situation. claiming that, quote, he will kill whoever took his daughter and he doesn't care if that threat is being recorded and that prison doesn't scare him. At the end of the call, Ronald takes the phone from Misty, stating that, quote, we have better people to talk to than people who aren't coming, and hangs up with 911. Following this call, sheriffs arrive at the home and begin their search. Here's a clip of a news segment which was filmed during the initial stages of Haleigh's disappearance. By the way, this clip is 3 minutes and 28 seconds, so again, if you want to skip past it, just fast forward 3 minutes.
What happened to Haleigh Cummings? What's the latest, Joy?
The very latest is something that was mentioned in your headlines. The Putnam County Sheriff's Office very happy with the search and the results found in that search. They have more than 200 volunteers here, both law enforcement and civilians, combing like a grid fashion every inch of brush and open field they can find in this area. And that search has now moved from directly around Haleigh Cummings' home to about a mile out. And there is so much land to cover, so much water, and they're going step by step. It's a very rural area. It's a third land, a third residential, and a third water. That is what makes up Satsuma. 5,300 people live here. It's been very warm out here, but the investigators and the people who are helping have had to dress in long sleeves, long pants, because as they take machetes and walking sticks through these wooded areas, they're getting cut by palmetto limbs and vines and all kinds of branches.
Where was the search today concentrated, and where did they find these items of interest that they're talking about?
Well, the search has now not been so much concentrated. They are still on the waterways, aerial and on boats. And they have also expanded to about a mile away from the house. But it's very interesting that you ask about what exactly they found and where they found it, because no matter how many times we asked investigators during their 4 p.m. news conference this evening, they would not tell us. Very tight-lipped about what was found, where it was found, but they did tell us it was civilians who found it, some volunteers who found these items, and we don't even know if they are actual items. They could have been tire tracks that someone took a picture of and then brought that back.
There really didn't appear to be any forced entry into the home. There's a screen door there, and there was a cinder block, we're told, that was placed there to hold the screen door open. And then, of course, the other door was wide open. It doesn't look like anybody actually broke into the home, though. So that makes law enforcement, look back a month back to see, who was in contact with this family. Did somebody know that Ronald doesn't come home from work until 3:30 in the morning? Did somebody prop open that screen door to get easier access inside the home? So there's really a lot going on here.
I want to go out to a very, very special guest, Crystal Cummings. She's Haleigh's paternal aunt, Ronald Cummings' sister. Thank you for being with us, Crystal.
Thank you.
Right now, Crystal, if you could say something to Haleigh's abductor, what would you say to this person?
I would say, please bring her home. There's a lot of family members out here, a lot of people that want Haleigh home. No matter where you take her, just bring her home, please. We're waiting for her, and we love her.
I know it's got to be extremely difficult there with your family, just not knowing what happened to this beautiful little 5-year-old girl. Now, tell us a little bit about Haleigh. Tell us, what is she like? What does she like to do? She looks like such a sweet young girl.
She is. She likes to play with other children. She likes makeup. She likes to dress up. She likes to play on computers and her grandma's phone.
What's her favorite color? Does she have any favorite toys that were there at the house still?
Her favorite color is purple and pink. She does have a camera that she got for Christmas. That's probably her favorite toy.
In the days following Haleigh's disappearance, Ronald, Misty, and other family members were regularly seen on television. On an NBC show featuring the host Meredith Vieira, she asked Misty why she would change her story so often with regards to Haleigh. She simply said, "I don't know." Ronald became angry when asked why he and Misty married 1 month after Haleigh's disappearance, and he replied with, "Mind your own business." On February 21st of 2009, which is just a couple weeks after Haleigh disappeared, Haleigh's mother, Crystal Sheffield, appeared on Geraldo at Large. Crystal said that Ronald's temper can get out of hand and he was capable of harming Haleigh, but admitted that he loves his daughter very much. Crystal went on to say that Ronald told Crystal's brother and Crystal's fiancé that he is 75% sure that he knows where his daughter Haleigh is. Interestingly, Crystal tells Geraldo that Ronald has not been genuinely crying on camera. She says she knows when he is really crying, and his cries lately have been fake. A month after Haleigh disappeared, on March 12, 2009, Ronald and Misty, which again, Ronald is Haleigh's father and Misty is Ronald's live-in girlfriend, they got married. Then took a honeymoon to New York City, where they appeared on the Today Show to talk about Haleigh's disappearance. After they appeared on the Today Show, which, by the way, they were very emotional, of course, on the show, and it was a very sad segment and everything. Once they finished doing the Today Show, they made online posts which depicted them happily enjoying the city and taking a number of selfies along the way. By the way, I saw something very interesting on a YouTube comment of someone suggested that if Ronald and Misty become married after Haleigh vanished, one cannot testify against the other if one of them are brought up on charges in Haleigh's disappearance. While that would be the case in some states, if not most states, that's actually not true in the state of Florida. I have done some research on this, and according to Section 90.504 of the husband and wife privileges within the Florida statute, there is no privilege in a criminal proceeding in which one spouse is charged with a crime committed at any time against the person or property of the other spouse, or the person or property of a child of either. So I can see no other reason as to why they got married so soon after Haleigh went missing. But these aren't very intelligent people we're talking about. For example, if you listen to the 911 call, you might remember Misty describing 5-year-old Haleigh as weighing between 40 and 60 pounds. A 5-year-old who is small and who appears skinny, like Haleigh did, she's not going to weigh 60 pounds. I mean, seriously. They don't sound like the brightest bulbs in the box to me. Anyway, also in the 911 recording, Ronald really doesn't seem to know what happened to Haleigh. But he could have been a careless parent who didn't care about anything really. He may have been upset in the beginning, but could have sunk back into the prescription drugs he was known for dealing and left his cares of his responsibility as a parent on the surface. He was accused by his ex and Haleigh's mother as being a violent person. Ronald's ex and Haleigh's mother tried to get a restraining order against him at some point before Haleigh disappeared. So, moving up a few months in the timeline to August 6th of 2009, Ronald gets into a fight with Misty's relatives. He was charged with burglary and assault and battery. His bond was set for $12,000 and he was released from jail the next day. Going to late August of 2009, Misty takes a voice stress polygraph test and failed the test, quote, miserably. Early the next year, on January 20th of 2010, Ronald and Misty are arrested on drug trafficking charges. They were set up in a sting operation conducted by authorities. Ronald and Misty were in a vehicle driven by an unknown person, probably an officer, to purchase prescription hydrocodone. Misty got out of the car to walk down the street where she purchased 25 pills for nearly $200. She returned to the car, they drove off, and were arrested soon thereafter. And there is actually a video of them going to pick up the pills and make their deal and everything. There's a video from a camera that was planted in the car that you can find on YouTube. So moving up to April of 2010, investigators received what appeared to be a significant tip in Haleigh's disappearance from inside the jail, and they then set up a mobile command center to conduct a new search less than 5 miles south of where Haleigh's home was. Deputies were called in from Putnam, Clay, and Marion counties, as well as authorities from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. Kelly Joyce from Putnam County said, quote, "A person told them that they could find Haleigh's body at the bottom of the St. Johns River here today, and I'm told they found something, but the Putnam County Sheriff's Office isn't saying anything about what they found," end quote. Authorities combed through the St. Johns River and did, in fact, find bones, but later determined those bones to be from an animal. When I watched a news clip of this search of the river, which was on Nancy Grace, of course. By the way, I don't like Nancy Grace at all, but for some reason, most news coverage of Haleigh on YouTube was that of Nancy Grace. Anyway, she had information that police were planning to take the animal bones they found with them to visit Misty in prison. They then planned to interrogate Misty once again, but this time with bones on the table. They planned to tell Misty exactly where they found the bones and attempt to squeeze a confession out of Misty. It apparently did not work because Haleigh still has not been found. Also in April of 2010, investigators officially reclassified their active case as a murder investigation. Despite this reclassification, Haleigh still remains on the active Amber Alert list. In the months and years since, Misty continued to give a variety of different stories as to what happened to Haleigh. For example, in August of 2010, Misty told investigators that Ronald's cousin Joe Overstreet, who was visiting the area from Tennessee to see relatives, came to the house that night and was overcome with rage when Haleigh wouldn't stop screaming. So Joe took it upon himself to throw Haleigh into a black bag and drove off with her in his van. Misty further states that while this was happening, she and Haleigh's little brother hid under the covers in the bed. If she were telling the truth this time, why not give this story on the day Haleigh disappeared to the authorities? If this is a true statement, she nor Ronald would be facing any charges. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Moving up to September of 2010, Ronald is sentenced on the drug charges he was arrested on back in January of the same year. He received 15 years in prison and was ordered to pay $250,000 in fines. Misty, at a later date, received 25 years for her role in the drug trafficking sting by police. She pled no contest. In May of 2011, Misty tells yet another story from prison. She says, "I woke up, I don't know why I woke up, and the kitchen light was on. I ran to the bathroom, or I ran to the kitchen to see what was going on. I thought Ronald was home, and he wasn't there, so I ran to my room to get my cell phone to call him. He wouldn't answer his phone when I called him 20 to 30 times. I turn around, she's not in her bed." End quote. One thing I found suspicious about this new story was her saying that she got her cell phone to call Ronald and he wouldn't answer. Remember the 911 recording? At the very end of the call, Ronald says, "Give me my phone," and disconnects with the dispatcher. Now, why didn't Misty just call 911 from her phone if she had her own phone? Why would she wait until Ronald got home to use his phone to call 911? That just doesn't sit well with me. I do have a clip of this interview of Misty. Take a listen.
See, what I was told that Ronald used to sell drugs a lot before we got together, and he owed people money. See, one day we were at this bar, it was his family-owned bar, and I was sitting in the truck. I got out of the truck and started to walk up to Ronald, and this black man was talking to him, and Ronald's like, "I need you to go sit back in the truck." I said, "Why? Why can't I hear?" And the black man said that he knows where Haleigh is, the Mexicans have her, and if Ronald pays this much money back, then he could go get her on Friday. And that was a long time ago. I don't know who would have took her. I don't understand why they would have took her. It just doesn't make sense to me.
This is yet another story I haven't heard prior to this. Again, why wouldn't she have said anything about this years ago? It is probably another lie she fabricated to help get the media and the public off her back. In 2011, the Putnam County Sheriff's Office released a statement saying that they have minimized the likelihood that Haleigh was abducted by a person unknown to her at the time. The Sheriff's Office is convinced that someone who knew Haleigh at the time abducted her. I think everyone saw this statement as being quite obvious. Haleigh Cummings was a kindergartner at Browning Pierce Elementary School in Satsuma, Florida, during the time she went missing. She enjoyed playing dress-up, putting on makeup, and playing on her grandmother's laptop. Her favorite colors are purple and pink, according to Haleigh's aunt, Crystal Cummings. So, Haleigh's parents and caregivers were the result of troubled upbringings, to put it lightly. Ronald grew up without his parents, living with his grandmother throughout his childhood. He has been arrested many times in the past for drugs, including heroin and the date rape drug GHB. Somehow, his charges against him were getting dropped. Maybe it's because Ronald's mother was a police dispatcher. Given her lack of parenting abilities, I probably wouldn't hire her to communicate with the police for a living, but she was in fact doing that. What stands out to me as being particularly troubling with Ronald is that he was arrested for possessing GHB, and he apparently has a thing for young girls. Misty needed permission from her parents to get married to Ronald because she was only 17 years old at the time. Misty's parents, by the way, had served prison time for crack cocaine charges while Misty was growing up. Misty claims that she was raped as a teenager and dropped out of school due to her inability to motivate herself to read in front of the class. She also felt ashamed that she didn't know half the stuff the other kids knew in school because her family wouldn't help her at home. They were too busy with drugs, she said. Authorities believe that Haleigh was abducted and probably murdered by someone close to her, probably by her father Ronald and or his now ex-wife Misty. Most likely, they disposed of her body and she has never been found. Misty, Ronald, or any other person in this case has not been charged for the abduction and probable murder of little Haleigh. So my conclusion is that I believe Haleigh was met with an accidental death as a result of Misty's drug abuse. My belief is that Misty, or another person at the home that night, left prescription drugs out on the counter or coffee table where Haleigh took these pills and experienced an overdose. Given Misty and Ronald's history of drug abuse, Haleigh probably observed them taking pills frequently and decided to take some herself. She may have been hungry at the time and thought they were food. Misty panicked when she observed the declining state of Haleigh and allowed her to pass away in the home. Misty neglected to call 911 for Haleigh out of fear that she would go to jail due to Haleigh overdosing on illegal narcotics. After Haleigh expired, Misty waited for Ronald to come home and they made plans on what to do with Haleigh. They decided to drive her away from the home and dispose of her body. Given the lack of intelligence of these individuals, I doubt they drove Haleigh to a faraway place. My guess is that Haleigh is buried somewhere within 5 to 10 miles of her home. I find it likely that Misty was high on drugs at the time. Misty and Ronald are currently in prison for drug trafficking charges, so I find this theory to be quite plausible. To this day, they kept this secret to themselves because the public would go ballistic if this gets out. Haleigh ingested drugs and could have been saved if Misty simply called 911. Instead, she selfishly thought of the consequences and became terrified over the thought of going to prison for this ordeal. If this gets out and they are placed in front of a jury for Haleigh's accidental overdose and death, they will show no remorse toward Misty and Ronald. They both figured that the past is the past and will take the truth to their graves. I am so hopeful that Haleigh is still alive somewhere, but it is too difficult to determine exactly who would have her and where she would be. The sheriff's office in Putnam County are convinced that Haleigh wasn't taken by a stranger, and I stand by this assumption. After all, they are the experts, and surely they possess evidence the public is not aware of. If Haleigh died from an overdose, this would make for such a tragedy because Haleigh could have been saved and would still be alive today. Haleigh would be enjoying her 8th grade year today. She would be making more friends, having sleepovers, and enjoying the fruits of childhood. Instead, she probably died at just 5 years of age and was left all by herself in the ground of a remote location. Nobody can visit her, and nobody can properly mourn with her. The closest place people can mourn for little Haleigh is at her memorial located at her elementary school. If you have any information whatsoever regarding this case, even if you think it is a minimally helpful tip, please call the Putnam County Sheriff's Office at area code 386-329-0800. Again, it's 386-329-0800. Even if you want to conceal your identity, find a payphone and communicate your tip to the sheriffs. Haleigh deserves to be found by any means necessary, even if it is through an anonymous tip. Just get it off your chest and know that you've done at least one good thing in this world. So that concludes this case of Haleigh Cummings for now. As with my past episodes, I will provide updates in my episode descriptions as they come along. If you hear any updates on this case of Haleigh, or any other case I have covered, you can either send me an email to DisappearedSeries@gmail.com, or you can leave me a comment in the description below. You can also visit my website at DisappearedSeries.weebly.com, click the contact button on the menu, and send me a message through that form. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, stay safe out there.